Welcome back, AP Psychers. In today's video, we are briefly going to overview some test-taking strategies, which would generally... Welcome back, AP Psychers. In today's video, we are going to talk about some test-taking strategies, which generally apply to the AP exam, but in these unique circumstances are going to specifically apply to the exam that we have in front of us. If you took the last FRQ, or one of the FRQs we've done recently, and noticed before the actual prompt, I provided you with this table because I wanted to give you an example of a score which would receive full credit on the AP exam and a score which would receive no credit on the AP exam. It is pivotal that when you answer an FRQ application bullet, as the ones that we've been doing primarily this week have shown, that you answer the question specifically. So for example, if the question asks how these terms are going to help you settle into an apartment, if your response doesn't talk about actually settling in, whether that's boosting your mood, sleeping better, enjoying it more, then it simply cannot score. So if you take a look at these two very similar responses, you will notice that the last couple words distinguishes a score that receives a 1, which is the full amount of points you can get on an FRQ, and then a bullet that receives absolutely no points whatsoever, even though it's verbatim up until those last 6 or 7 words. Both of these definitions are the same. Under each circumstance, the student says, in this case, it will help Melly settle into the apartment. But that's a really broad, generic statement. It doesn't really explain how that's going to happen. From that point, both students gave the exact same example. However, what distinguishes the one on the left from the one on the right is that clear point at the very end, allowing Melly to sleep better as a direct result of the color difference between the two different shades of paint that she could have had for her room. That is what clearly distinguishes these two bullets from one another. If you fail to do that, then you simply will not score. So for example, this was the exact FRQ from 2016. It asks how each of these terms can help Ashley drive from New York to California. If you talk about motor neurons, which are responsible for enabling movement, allowing her to do things that are unrelated to driving, even if your definition is correct, it's technically a correct application of motor neurons, it simply cannot score. You need to directly address the prompt. It needs to be about driving. It needs to be about having a negative experience on the trip. It needs to be directly related to only the behaviors in the prompt. That is one area that you must ensure you follow heading into the AP exam, because at that point, if you fail to do so, you're wasting your time answering the bullet. The other really pivotal thing is to make sure you're talking in the correct context between helping and hurting. If a bullet says help, you need to be very clear in what the term is doing to help the individual in the scenario. For example, in this, Ashley needs to either successfully drive across the country, if it's for part A, or unsuccessfully drive across the country. You need to be very explicit. And your examples can be really small ones, like motor neurons enable movement. They can help Ashley turn the wheel to successfully change lanes without getting into a car accident, thus allowing her to reach California safely. That's a super simple FRQ bullet. It doesn't even follow the 3-sentence structure that we've been taught, but it actually would still score even in that one somewhat longer sentence. So make sure you are clearly indicating help or hurt. If you give me a bad outcome, a negative outcome on a help bullet, it cannot score. Ashley cannot be getting into a car accident because of the terms up here. That obviously isn't going to help her arrive in California. So make sure if you see a help bullet, although you don't have the test in front of you and you can't circle it, make sure you register that if it's a help bullet, the outcome needs to be desirable. If it's a hinder bullet, or of a negative experience bullet, which is how it was worded in 2016, be dark and dreary. Make Ashley get into a car accident. Make her get pulled over. Make it very, very evident that something negative has happened as a byproduct of one of the terms in question. For example, circadian rhythms are responsible for regulating roughly 24-hour cycles that involve things like your sleep-wake cycle. It involves the secretion of hormones such as melatonin, which can help put you to sleep at night, relatively the same time. Make it so that she's clearly jet lagged and that her jet lag causes her to get into a car accident, which clearly hinders her ability to get across country. Make it as blunt and straight to the point as possible. Because if you tell me an example and it's sort of just an example of how it applies and it's not clearly negative, not clearly positive, when the bullet definitively determines that it wants a hinder, not going to score, waste of time to even write it if you're not going to plan on doing that. So make sure when it says help, the outcome is clearly beneficial. Make sure when you're talking about a hinder or a negative experience, the outcome is clearly a negative. You must ensure you do that on the AP exam. It's not inconceivable that you get a bullet that asks, how does these terms affect the scenario? In which case, you can kind of decide on your own how the term best suits that prompt. If you want it to help, make it help. If you want it to hurt, make it hurt. But make sure your example is very clear and very much founded in the scenario at hand. Additionally, make sure that heading into the exam that you're wary of the timing. When you look at a bullet like this is 7 bullets. The exam that you're going to have is going to have 8 bullets on the application question. Be prepared to see some terms that you're unfamiliar with, or at least terms that you don't readily recall or can retrieve from long-term memory. That should be expected, and don't get overwhelmed by that. Make sure you're still focused on the task at hand, because quite frankly, most of the time, if you can do 50% of the bullets on an FRQ, you're generally going to get a 3 or above. Once you can start to do 5, 6, 7, certainly 8, then you're going to start talking about getting a higher score. But if you see an FRQ and you feel like you only know a handful of them, wow, I only really can do 3 or 4 of these with confidence, I can guess on a couple of them and a few I really do not recall, that's actually not the end of the world. So with that in mind, make sure in the allotted time that you are provided, you answer every bullet that you have confidence in. So for example, you can do these out of order as long as you clearly distinguish which bullet is which in your FRQ. As a result, make sure you focus on the ones that you can answer definitively. Don't waste time guessing or giving a response that you're not confident in, and then all of a sudden leave a bullet which you knew you could have got for the end when the timer is running low and perhaps getting to a point where you don't even get a chance to write it in the first place. As you know, when you get the first FRQ, the application FRQ with 8 bullets, you are going to have a 30-minute timer. That timer includes the 25 minutes they intend to give you to write, and also 5 minutes for uploading. Within those 5 minutes, you are allowed to technically continue writing, but you significantly risk the possibility of not being able to upload in time. Many students across the globe have reported some uploading issues, certainly if you're using things like your iPhone to upload. So make sure ahead of time you have prepared the manner in which you plan on uploading and you have practiced with the demo. That way, when those 5 minutes come and the timer turns to red, if you need to finish a bullet or need to finish one of the bullets that you seem to have skipped, you have an opportunity to do so with the confidence that you'll be able to upload. If you ensure that you do all of the bullets you know ahead of time in the order in which you know them, at least that way, when the timer hits 5 minutes, you're not rushing through a bullet that you're confident in. You're rushing through a bullet that you're more or less guessing anyway, with in the back of your mind the knowledge that if you can do about half of these on a regular AP exam, you should be in good shape to actually score a 3, a 4, or a 5. So those are just some generic test-taking strategies that I wanted to alert you of heading into the AP exam. In addition to that, the College Board has provided a long series of insights into some of the issues that students have had early on in test taking. For example, the iPhone's default image format is not compatible with the browser. So make sure that if you are going to use your iPhone to take pictures and then upload them onto the test browser, that you've followed the links provided on Google Classroom. Additionally, it appears as though some students who ignore updates on their web browsers ran into problems on the AP exam. So make sure, if you plan on taking the AP exam on your computer, that your Google Chrome and your compatible web browser is readily up to date. Finally, I've alerted this before in previous videos, and I've mentioned this in some of our Google Hangouts, but extensions such as Grammarly seem to interfere with the web browser and the test browser itself. So make sure any add-ons or extensions on your Google Chrome or your Safari or whatever web browser you plan on using have been disabled or really entirely deactivated if necessary, uninstalled. You don't want Grammarly to interfere with your ability to take the test when that was an easy issue to avoid ahead of time. We are just a few days away from the AP exam. I plan on conducting a Google Meet really for the majority of Monday and then certainly most of Tuesday morning up until the exam at 2 p.m. So if you have any last-second questions, there are plenty of opportunities coming up for you to ask. I'll have a ton of availability. I understand the notion of an open book test might make it seem like studying isn't important, but many students from previous AP exams, ones that have happened already this week, have reported to their teachers, whether that's AP Gov, a course that's not offered at Apponequid, or even some of the AP history classes that have taken their tests already, that knowing the content definitely helps because that timer is quite a bit faster than you might anticipate. And although you have access to that database of terms, which again is going to disappear off Google Drive on Tuesday or on Monday night, although you have access to that database, it is beneficial to know some of the terms so that you can confidently answer them without having to look up all 8 of the bullets or all 6 of the research bullets. So you can come by, whether it's Monday or Tuesday, if you have any questions, coordinate with some of your friends, I'd be more than happy to go through some challenging FRQ bullets with you. I'd be more than happy to provide you with a sample question, and then you can time yourself taking it with the opportunity to pause and ask me questions as you're going along. There are plenty of things that we can do within those last couple of days to ensure that you're prepared for Tuesday.